The component of lesson delivery has 4 features. The first 2 features are that the content objectives and language objectives are supported by the lesson. This means that at the beginning of the lesson, objectives are introduced. Then, all of the activities, discussion, reading, and writing focus on having students acquire the knowledge and skills that are stated in those objectives. So, at the end of the lesson, students should be able to articulate or identify that they learned what was stated in those objectives. The third feature is that students are engaged approximately 90 to 100% of the class period. That means that teachers prepare activities that engage students in meaningful learning throughout the class period. Our English learners are students who can least afford to have wasted class time. Finally, the pacing of the lesson needs to be appropriate. Not too fast for beginning speakers, but not too slow for intermediate or advanced speakers so that the lesson becomes tedious. Active engagement is much more likely when the pacing of the lesson is appropriate.
Here, Kendra Moreno teaches a reading lesson to her 3rd grade class. One of the state standards for that week was identifying fact and opinion. Her class of 24 students is comprised of English learners, special education students, and 4 native English speakers.
We've done fact and opinion before, though, haven't we? So we're going to take it a little bit further this time, and let me show you what I mean. Help me out with our objectives today.
The students will be able to...
Thank you. Distinguish fact from opinion. What do I mean distinguish? That's a big 3rd grade word. What do I mean distinguish? Karina, what do I mean distinguish?
Tell the difference.
Thank you. You're going to be able to tell me the difference today between a fact and an opinion. Okay? Help me with the next objective.
The students will be able to...
Thank you. You will orally defend their position on whether a statement is fact or opinion. This is the part that's different today. Not only will you tell me if something is a fact or an opinion, but then I'm going to ask you, how do you know? And so you have to be able to tell me, well, I know it's a fact because I can prove it. I can ask an expert, measure it, read about it, observe it. Or I know it's an opinion because it's what somebody thinks or feels. I want to go back to the story we were reading in guided reading today, the story of Chibi. We're constantly assessing the content objective. That's been the way we have taught for years. But then to actually give them practice in that language objective at the same time and to design activities where they're both complementing each other and able to practice language and content at the same time. It's been challenging, but it's pretty rewarding, and you can see a big difference in the kids. Turn in your book to page 164. There's a statement about how the baby duckling looks. And I looked this word up in the dictionary. It's not even there. But the author uses a word, scraggly. Can you find the word scraggly? What do you think they mean there, the scraggly duckling? I'm picturing this baby duck they thought was going to be a dud coming out of the shell. How do you think scraggly? What would that look like? Karina, what do you think? Tiny. And how would his feathers look?
Wet. Standing up.
Wet and probably standing up. Okay. The duck is scraggly is the sentence that we have coming from the book. Is that a fact or an opinion? Scraggly. Standing up, sort of messed up. What do you think?
Very different.
Very different. Nancy, what do you think?
Opinion.
Opinion. You know, scraggly to me, thinking of, how many of you think a hairdo that looks like this, like a punk rocker, who thinks that that looks scraggly? Just a mess. I don't think it looks scraggly. I think it looks cool. I wish my hair looked just like that. I wouldn't call that scraggly at all. I'd call that really cool. So is scraggly a word that's going to be an opinion or a fact?
Opinion.
Because scraggly to me is a bad thing, but I think that looks good. But remember, today, we're not just talking about a fact and an opinion. You had another job. You have to defend your position. You've got to give support why you think something is a fact or why you think something's an opinion. We're going to have a little activity right here. We've got plenty of space, and it's called Inside-Outside Circle. we're going to, in a moment, get a piece of paper, and you're going to have a statement on it. This statement will either be a
fact
or an
opinion.
Nice job. When you get your paper, I'm going to have, when I say go, I'm going to have the outside circle begin, and they will read their statement. Then I want the other person, the inside circle person, to say whether it's a
Fact
or an
opinion.
Okay? But then are we finished?
No.
No, because in the inside circle we'll have to explain why they think that. So if it's a fact, you might end up saying things like, well, I can ask an expert, I can measure it, I can read it in a book, I can observe it. But if it's an opinion, you might end up saying things like, oh, you can't prove that. That's what somebody thinks or feels.
And vibration is when something moves back and forth very rapidly.
They're still demonstrating their knowledge, but they're also verbalizing their knowledge, and they're orally defending their statements or coming to backing up with good rationale why they think what they think. Okay, let's discuss those statements really quickly and see how everybody did. I heard some wonderful discussion, and I got to take part in some of the discussion. That was pretty good. This first one, I covered up our objective, but let's remember that we have to orally defend our arguments, okay? So you have to show support for why you think something. The United States is the greatest country in the world. Fact or opinion? Now, I expect everybody to be thinking of an answer, because you never know if I'll pull your stick. In fact, all of the sticks are back in. The United States is the greatest country in the world. Alma, you say it's an opinion. Why? Somebody who lives in another part of the world might think that United States is not the greatest. And there was a clue word. Thank you. So when you're thinking about opinions, there are words that are clue words, and greatest is one of them. You're right. I heard Juan Carlos say, if you see the word best, that's another opinion word, because what I think is best, Anthony, and what you think is best could be totally different. I think, what do I think the greatest invention is?
Telephone.
I think the telephone is the greatest invention. My grandparents, they think that the car is the greatest invention because they were alive when the car first was invented. We might think that the computer is the greatest invention, but we all have different what?
Opinions.
Nice job. The way SIOP is different is that it has given us the tools we need to make sure that we're consistent, to help us to be explicit, to help us make sure that we have designed our lessons so that there's plenty of practice for language and content. So I don't know that it's new material as much as it's the best practices we already knew being put to better use.